Hello and welcome to the Building an Indie Business podcast with SupremeRumHam. I'm your host, Alex Edmonds. Today, I will be discussing podcasting and how I come up with my episode ideas. This will be the first episode I will do about podcasting because I run a podcast community and I want to share my knowledge about podcasting to help other people become podcasters or improve their podcast. So I will be discussing the 4 ways I come up with episode ideas for my podcast. The 4 ways I come up with episode ideas are doing something, conversations, exercise, and events. I will be giving you examples of episodes I recorded and came up with through these 4 methods. Okay, but first, I wanted to give a shout out to someone in the community, and that person is Rizal Yusuf. He has created vegsocial.com, the social network for vegans and vegetarians. So if you are a vegan or a vegetarian and you are looking for people to talk to, check out his website. I will link to it in the show notes. Alright, let's get into it. So the first way I come up with episode ideas is I do something. Like I work on the website. So through working on the website, I have come up with several ideas, such as the product update episode for the forum. I have been working on the forum, and that is the only thing I work on for the website. And while doing that, I had the idea to talk about it on the podcast. Another episode that I did that was linked to me working on the website is the dark mode vanilla JS episode. I was adding dark mode to my website. I think this was not open podcast, but this was the directory, and I had the idea to show people and comment on it, do a live stream, and then record the audio, is what I mean, and post the audio as a podcast episode. The next doing something that helps me come up with podcast episodes is using new platforms. And this can be like any website that I've recently discovered and I've started using and testing things out. So this is the Minds.com episode. This is the Barnacles episode. This is the Quora episode. All 3 of those were platforms that are new to me, and I had some thoughts about them. Another thing that I do that helps me come up with episodes is I outline episodes. So while I'm outlining, I will think of new episodes that I could do for the podcast. So one day I was out of episode ideas and I was outlining my emergency episode. My emergency episode is learning to code, and this is basically the process of how I learned to code. And this is a 5-year process. I started at 18 and I struggled till I was about 21. And so I don't really want to talk about this because I feel like my audience doesn't need to hear it or it won't help anyone. So if you ever hear this episode, I have run out of episodes for the moment. So I was outlining this episode and talking about, I was outlining the part where I finally learned JavaScript. And that gave me the idea for the 1% rule episode, which is something I use. And another thing that I do, or the final thing that I do, is I read. So that accounts for the 3 or 4 book discussions episodes that I've done, and the Learning SAS episode that I did, because I was reading a book to help me learn SAS. Okay. The next method I use for coming up with episode ideas is I have conversations with people. One episode that I came up with after a conversation was the comparing podcasting and YouTube episode. So I was having a conversation with Owen Conti, a valued member of the community on Twitch. This was one of the first conversations I ever had with him, and we got into a discussion about streaming versus podcasting, and that came then the episode for podcasting and creating videos on YouTube came to me. Same with the product update newsletter episode. I came up with the exact idea, like what content I would be putting in the newsletter after having a conversation with some of the members of the open podcast community. Another way I come up with episode ideas is from conversations that I see. So I see people talking about dogs, and I thought, what if I make an episode about dogs and make it seem like it's an actual episode, but it's not. And then I could test out whether dog content increases your likes and your views. Yeah, and same thing with the coffee episode. I had that idea as well. Okay, so the third method I use to create episodes is I exercise. And the example I have of this is the Growing a Community episode. So I go to work 3 days a week as of now, and I have to walk a mile to the office. During this time, I think a lot, and one day I was out of episode ideas for the time being, and I thought about the things that I do. And one thing that I have been doing is growing the open podcast community. And I have specific methods for growing the open podcast community. So I thought it would be good for me to talk about how I've been growing the community. Another episode that was the result of exercise is the benefits of podcasting episode. So I was walking, not to work, probably somewhere else, and I thought about how I have benefited from podcasting and that it would be a good idea for me to discuss how I've benefited from podcasting to encourage other people to start their podcasts and start podcasting. Okay. The final method I use to come up with episode ideas is events. So these are things that happen to me. So one example is the episode Failure to Design for Thousands of Users. And how I came up with this episode is something happened to me at work, and I used that event at work to write about or to record that episode. The other episode that was a result of an event that happened to me is the failed HN post. And how that happened was I posted an article on Hacker News and it got no clicks. So I decided to talk about that and why my post was a failure. Okay. Thank you for listening. If you found this episode interesting and you want to know more of the things I do around my podcast, like marketing or the setup or the equipment that I use, let me know and I'll do an episode on them. I have many ideas for podcasting episodes. So if you enjoyed it, let me know. And if this episode has given you the podcast bug, but you're still a little nervous about creating your own podcast, come join the open podcast community and reach out to me. We have an unreleased community podcast that I'm looking for other people to host before we release it. And this can be anything you want. If you want to be interviewed or you want to interview someone, that's fine. If you want to do a solo episode like this, that's fine. If you want to do a roundtable with your friends, that's also fine. Any episode that you want to do, we will post it and you will get the feeling for what podcasting is like. And finally, if you're a podcaster and you're looking for a community of podcasters, come join the open podcast community on Telegram. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye. Are you still there? Alright, I have a joke. How do you keep a bagel from getting away? You put locks on it. Okay. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye.